Hi, Celeste Cuffey here of Life Empowered Consulting Services, where our mission is to reach, empower, and motivate others to access and utilize their God given, their natural, their inherent talents and skills, building better families, companies, and communities worldwide. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we are getting ready to go through the second part of the 10 lessons that I have learned as a business owner. So, this is part two. If you've not checked out part one, please do. And I thank you for joining me on part two. So, the first one for today is this: just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean that you have to keep doing it that way. Evolution is necessary. As I said in the first video, the world is changing frequently. Things are changing day in and day out. And so it's important that we are agile and we can adapt. And so just because you've done a thing a certain way 5 years ago, is there a way to be more efficient? Just because you've done a thing a certain way last year, is there a way to be more efficient? Move into that. Make your life easier. Become more agile. So just because you've always done it doesn't mean you have to. And guess what? That goes for services as well. Just because you offered that service last year doesn't mean you have to do it this year. Hone in or expand, whatever it is, but understand that you have the autonomy and the flexibility and the agility to do so. The second lesson for today is that it is okay to ask for help. I actually get a little disheartened, full transparency here, when I hear people say that nobody will help me. I actually challenge that as well because I personally am aware of so many resources that are out here willing to help, from coaches such as myself to therapists, to organizations that want to help further educate, further help business owners, whatever it is. I just know it's out there. And so please take advantage of the resources. Take advantage of the resources. It's okay to ask for help. None of us were born alone. We shouldn't have to live alone. And we should be able to accomplish things with a collaboration, with the team, with the village. The next thing that I want you to know is that decision making is not the last step. So many of us say, I'm going to start a business, or I want to get promoted. I want to go back to school. Whatever your want is, whatever that thing is, you make the decision, but please understand that that is not the last step. I often use this analogy: three frogs sitting on a lily pad. One of them, I guess it's a riddle, three frogs sitting on a lily pad, and one of them decides to jump. How many are sitting on the lily pad? The answer is three. Because just because you made the decision doesn't mean the action, the implementation, the execution actually took place. And so when you are making decisions, and this is why we need to make good decisions and we need to be thoughtful about the decisions that we make. But when we make them, let's go ahead and take it that next level and execute, because decision making is not the last step. I had to decide to start Life Empowered. But once I started it, I had to get my LLC in place. I had to work on customer base. I had to build up a pipeline. I had to start networking. I had to get marketing materials. There was a lot of things because the decision was not the last step. Very same for you. What training do you need? What development do you need? What coaching do you need? What tools do you need? Because the decision is not the last step, friends. The next thing that I want you to know is that you have to be committed even when others are not. Now, I just said I don't want you to do it alone. Get help, absolutely. But you have to be committed when others are not. And let me tell you why. Because it's your baby. This is your vision. This is your dream. Nobody will see it like you see it. Nobody will get it like you get it. Nobody will form it like you form it. You will lead out in what others will do to support. They're the supporting cast. But you, your vision, your dream, that's the star of the show. And so you have to be committed to the show. You have to be committed to the dream, even when others are not. So that's the fourth lesson. You have to be committed, even when others are not. The fifth lesson is that there is never a good time to pivot. There's never a good time to pivot. So just be planful. Now, I can't speak specifically to what your life is like or it has been like, but I will tell you in the last 3 years, my life has been upside down, literally upside down. I've moved out the state. I moved back in the state. My family member was sick. That was very taxing. I've decided to go back to school. My son moved out of state. He moved back to the state. Just one thing after another. And guess what? I had to still pivot. The only thing I did differently is I was planful. And because it was my vision, because it was my baby, and because I was committed, I pivoted in spite of those things. And guess what? I did it planfully and everything worked out. Everything worked out. So the last thing that I'm going to give you, and this is 6, guys. I've given you my 5, but I'm going to give you one more I call it the bonus. This is going to be the 6th and last lesson that I offer you on today. So again, make sure you watch the first video so you can get the first 5. I've just walked through the second 5 with you. And then here is your bonus one. Scaling requires you to trust yourself differently. And when you think about scaling, a lot of times you think about scaling a business, but what about scaling you? What about scaling your growth? What about scaling your development? You know what that does? It requires you to be more vulnerable, even with you. My dad always says, lie to anybody else, but don't lie to yourself. Be honest, I'm not good at that, but I need to. I need to learn it well enough so that when I bring on in support to do it, I'll understand what they're doing. I'm still not saying own it all per se, but I am saying that you have to trust yourself differently. Now you have to trust that you put the right people in place to do the work versus trusting yourself to do all of the work. You got to trust yourself differently. And if I, 10 years later, was in the same place that I was 10 years ago, there would be a problem. So there ought to be growth. There ought to be scaling. And the only way that happens is if you trust yourself differently. So that was my bonus. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And please, please, please stay connected with me and live life empowered. Take care. Goodbye.